Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Unfiltered and Unapologetic podcast, the space where we speak from the soul, get honest about our healing, and finally stop pretending we're okay when we're not. I'm your host, Gil-Soto, Dominicana from Bani El Cibao, raised in Lawrence, Massachusetts, where softness had to be earned and survival came first. This episode, it's for the parts of you that still flinch at rejection. The parts that shut down when things feel too intense. The part that keeps replaying old conversations, trying to make them make sense. Today, we're talking about the inner child, not in a cute, Pinteresty, Instagrammy, TikTok way, but in a real, raw, tender Dominican way. We're going to unpack how we were raised to survive, not to feel. How emotional neglect, silence, and over-responsibility still shape the way we think, relate, love, and struggle. And most importantly, how to start healing that inner child who's still running the show. This one's not just personal, it's ancestral. And it's going to take more than affirmations to break the cycle. So if you're ready to stop shrinking for love and start making space for yourself, stay with me. Let's get into it. Let's be honest. A lot of us were raised to survive, not to feel safe, seen, or emotionally supported. And especially if you're from a Dominican, Afro-Caribbean, or immigrant household, love was often shown in action, not affection. You were fed, you had a roof, you had rules, you were told to be strong, grateful, obedient. But what you weren't told was how to name your feelings, or how to cry without shame, or how to sit without guilt. Being raised to survive means being taught to keep going even when you're exhausted. It means seeing your parents hold back tears so you learn to do the same. It means emotional silence becomes normal. And when that's your baseline, you grow up thinking anxiety is just a personality. That hyper-independence is just how you are. This episode is for the ones who didn't get the chance to feel soft, to rest, to be comforted. For the ones who had to be strong too young. Who now wonder why rest feels unsafe, why they shut down in relationships, why joy feels out of reach. You are not broken, you were conditioned. You're not dramatic, you were never allowed to feel. You're not sensitive, you're just finally sensing what was always there. Let this be the beginning of your return to self. Let's break that survival pattern slowly, softly, together. Okay, we're going to talk about how the inner child still shapes you. You might be 25, 35, even 50 years old. You might be paying bills, raising kids, managing a career. But inside, there's still a version of you who flinches when someone raises their voice, who over-explains to avoid being misunderstood, who feels guilt for resting or joy for too long. That's not immaturity. That's the inner child running the show. When we talk about the inner child, we're not being metaphorical. Your brain, especially the limbic system, that's the part that's responsible for emotions and survival, is shaped by your earliest experiences. If your needs weren't met back then, your brain learned to prioritize protection over connection, reaction over reflection. This is why your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's logical and rational, can be fully aware that you're safe now. But your body still panics when you get ignored, rejected, or feel out of control. You're not broken, you're just unhealed. The inner child still speaks through your people pleasing, avoidant behavior, inability to rest, need for control, deep fear of abandonment, and until that child is heard, understood, and nurtured, you will keep living cycles that aren't aligned with who you're becoming. All right, here's a journal prompt. If you haven't already, get something to write with and a piece of paper or on your phone, on your iPad, wherever. And the journal prompt is, where does your inner child show up in your adult life? What situations trigger the little you inside? And you could pause the episode if you want to answer right now. Okay, so the next section is called Let That Child Speak, the power of listening, not silencing. All right, so most of us learned to silence our inner child before we even knew what we were doing. We learned to shut up, sit still, behave, and be strong. We were told that speaking up was talking back, that expressing emotion was being dramatic, that asking for comfort was being needy. But silencing the child doesn't mean that they go away. It means that they scream louder through your anxiety, your burnout, your overreactions, your shutdowns. That voice that you think is crazy, that's a child who was never allowed to speak. And when you've spent years silencing yourself, not just your voice, but your reactions, your instincts, your truth, it becomes second nature. You smile when you want to cry. You say, it's fine, when it's not. You freeze when you want to run. Your body equates silence with safety. But that kind of safety comes at a cost. Over time, your nervous system starts to believe your truth is too loud, that your feelings are too dangerous, that peace only exists when you abandon yourself. When you're always in survival mode, your nervous system wires itself for silence and hypervigilance. You can scan for danger, you minimize your needs, you disconnect from your body, and the inner child learns, I'm not safe to feel. I'm not allowed to take up space. But healing begins when you stop gaslighting yourself. When you say, hey, little me, I hear you. I believe you. What do you need today? You don't need to explode to be heard. You don't need to stay silent to stay safe. You just need to start listening. That's what your inner child needed all along. Okay, so we have another journal prompt. What did your inner child need to hear that they never did? How can you say those words to yourself now? Okay, the next section is called Healing the Inner Child Opens You to Abundance. Healing your inner child isn't just about processing pain. It's about making space for joy, ease, and overflow. Abundance isn't only about money or material things. It's the freedom to feel peace in your body, to experience connection without fear, and to rest without guilt. When your inner child feels safe, your nervous system relaxes. And when your body relaxes, your brain becomes receptive to new possibilities. That's when the magic happens. Your mind becomes less cluttered, your heart more open, and your vision for the future clearer. You begin to manifest with more ease, not because you're trying harder, but because you're no longer blocking what wants to come in. You're no longer self-sabotaging from fear or unworthiness. You're no longer shrinking to feel safe. God meets you in openness. Healing the inner child makes you a clearer vessel for his abundance. And no, it doesn't happen overnight. It's slow. It's layered. But you will thank yourself later. Okay, there's a journal prompt for this section. Where in your life are you blocking abundance because of unhealed beliefs from childhood? What would it feel like to believe you're worthy of receiving more? Okay, now we're going to talk about becoming who that child needed, even when it gets ugly. So, this part of the journey isn't glamorous. Healing sounds beautiful, but it's often messy, uncomfortable, and deeply humbling. When you finally sit with the pain you've avoided for years, it will hurt. You might cry over things you thought you forgot. You might grieve a childhood you never got to have. You might feel rage at how unfair it all was. This is what shadow work looks like. Letting the hard truths come to the surface without turning away. The dark night of the soul is real. It's the spiritual depression that comes when your old self no longer fits, but the new you hasn't arrived yet. It's lonely, it's scary, but it's sacred. It means you're shedding. It means you're healing. In Dominican and Afro-Caribbean culture, we're taught to push through, to be grateful, to never complain. But the silence has a cost. And part of healing is giving yourself permission to feel what your younger self had to bury to survive. This is where you start reparenting. You show up for yourself with softness. You set boundaries. You say no. You give yourself grace. You don't run. You stay. Okay, so there's another journal prompt. What parts of you feel hardest to love right now? And what would it look like to offer those parts grace and not shame? All right, let's talk about what happens when you don't feel safe to express your pain. It doesn't disappear. It just gets buried in your chest, in your stomach, your muscles, your sleep, your health. Like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk says, in The Body Keeps Score, the body keeps score. If the memory of trauma is encoded in your organs, in heartbreaking and gut-wrenching emotions, then it needs to be accessed and processed in those places. What does that mean for us, though? It means your anxiety might be your body's way of saying, I don't feel safe. Your gut issues may be rooted in chronic fight or flight. Your neck pain, possibly a result of always bracing for impact. When you were younger, if crying, yelling, or asking for help wasn't allowed, your nervous system had to adapt. It stored that pain in your physical being. Over time, you forgot the reason, but your body never did. That's why healing can't just be mental. It has to be embodied. Breath work, somatic therapy, movement, dancing, walking barefoot in the yard. These things aren't just woo. Somatic therapy is a body-based approach to healing that helps you release trauma through the nervous system, not just by talking about it, but by feeling it and letting it move. It's the kind of therapy that asks, where in the body are you holding this pain? Because your mind might say, I'm okay, but your body clenches. Your shoulders stay tense. Your stomach flips. Somatic work gives your body a voice. It helps you come back to yourself when you've been living on high alert for years. And our Dominican ancestors, Africans and Tainos, already knew this. They cried loudly. They danced to release. They prayed through their body. They didn't call it somatic therapy, but they lived it. We can return to that wisdom too. We're just remembering what they never forgot. That the body keeps score. And it also holds the key to our freedom. Okay, here's a journal prompt. What physical symptoms have followed you for years? What emotions might be stored in your body that never had a safe place to go? Trauma is not just something that happened to you. It's something that continues to live in your body, especially when it goes unprocessed. And sometimes it shows up in ways that even you can't make sense of. You might freeze when somebody yells, even if they're not yelling at you. You might feel your chest tighten when someone says, "We need to talk." You might go numb in moments where you're supposed to feel joy. These are not character flaws. These are trauma responses. Your limbic brain, the emotional center of your brain, reacts to perceived threats faster than your rational brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, can think them through. That's why you can feel unsafe, even when there's no actual danger around you. Your brain is doing its job, keeping you alive, based on old wiring that hasn't been updated. The Body Keeps Score explains how trauma disrupts brain pathways. You don't just remember trauma in your mind. Your whole system replays it. Your whole body. Your nervous system stays on high alert. Your muscles tense. Your breath shortens. Your digestion slows. Your sleep becomes light, restless, and non-existent. This is why some people can't just think positive or snap out of it. It's not about willpower. It's about neurobiology. But here's the hope. Your brain and body can learn safety again through consistency, breath, compassion, therapy, creativity, and connection. You can rewire what trauma once damaged. Okay, I have another journal prompt for you guys. What moments in your life trigger reactions that feel bigger than the situation? What might your body be trying to protect you from based on what you've been through before? Okay, now we're going to talk about reparenting, becoming the safe place you never had. Reparenting is about becoming what you needed but didn't get. It's not about blaming your family forever. It's about stepping in with love, presence, and new choices. It's saying, that wasn't okay, but I'm safe now, and I get to do things differently. This is where It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolynn becomes so powerful. He explains that most of our emotional pain, self-sabotage, and insecurity doesn't begin with us. It's inherited. Generational trauma is real. If your abuela had to stay strong because no one gave her the space to cry, and your mom learned to hold it in too, guess what? That silence lives in your DNA. But so does resilience, so does joy, and so does God. When you reparent, you're choosing to become a safe parent to your inner child with daily care, not just self-care. It's talking to yourself gently, to yourself when you make a mistake, feeding your body when it's hungry, not punishing it, setting boundaries even when it feels scary, creating routines that tell your nervous system you're safe now. Reparenting is spiritual. It's nervous system work. It's emotional literacy. It's choosing softness when survival taught you to be hard. Okay, so I have a journal prompt for you guys, another one. How can you become the adult you needed as a child? What's one small thing you can give yourself today that you used to have to go without? Okay, now let's talk about God. Not just the religious image, not just a tradition, but the relationship. You can't heal your inner child fully if you don't feel safe somewhere. And one of the most powerful, safe places can be your relationship with God. For many of us, especially in Dominican or immigrant households, our relationship with faith was built on fear, shame, guilt, and perfectionism. We were told to pray, but not to feel, to obey, but not to question, to go to church, but not to go to therapy. That disconnect still lingers. and how we hide our pain, and how we suppress our feelings, and how we feel like we need to be good enough to be blessed. But healing isn't about perfection, it's about presence. And the truth is, a regulated nervous system is a spiritual gift. When you slow down your breath, when you feel your feelings, when you name your needs without shame, you're building emotional literacy, and that's sacred. That's prayer. That's you saying, God, I trust you enough to slow down, to be honest, and to be human. God is not outside of you, waiting to punish you for being sad or anxious or imperfect. God is in your body, in your breath, in your healing. And sometimes the very reason you feel so unwell in your mind is because you stop trusting the God that lives in your heart. You've been fighting your thoughts, not realizing that stillness is where He speaks the loudest. Not chaos, not control, but surrender. When you start listening to your emotions, tending to your inner child, and regulating your nervous system, you're not being soft. You're being spiritually grounded. Okay, another journal prompt. Where have I been taught to fear my emotions in the name of faith? What would it look like to feel safe in my body and close to God at the same time? And I wanted to do a little prayer to help with this process. So please put your hand on your chest. My God, I place every wound, every memory, every piece of my inner child in your hands. You saw me when I was little and confused, trying to be brave in a world that asked too much. You were there when I swallowed my feelings to keep the peace. You held me when no one else knew I needed holding. And you're still here, reminding me that healing is holy, that softness is strength, that crying is not weakness, it's release, that boundaries are sacred, that I am not behind, I am right on time. I ask you now to walk with me as I learn to trust again. Trust you, trust my body, trust myself. Help me unlearn the fear that says I'm too much or not enough. Help me pause when I want to run. Help me speak when I want to hide. Help me stay when the child in me wants to disappear. For every cycle I'm breaking, give me strength. For every old belief I'm replacing, give me truth. For every version of me that still hurts, give me love. Let my healing be a prayer. Let my rest be a rebellion. Let my softness be my return home. I don't have to do this perfectly, but I am not doing it alone. Amen. And if you made it to the end of this episode, I want to honor you. You just walked through trauma, faith, emotional literacy, reparenting, ancestral wounds, the nervous system, the inner child, and the truth about what healing really takes. That's no small thing. That's holy work. Take a breath. And give yourself grace. Let this episode live in your body before rushing to the next thing. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not alone. You are becoming. You are breaking cycles. You are remembering who you were before the world told you to shrink. And if this episode moved you, please take a moment to leave a 5-star review. It helps this message reach more people who need it. I'm also selling my blank healing journals on Amazon, perfect for writing, processing, or starting your own inner child work. Check the link in the show notes to grab yours. And lastly, share this episode with someone who might be feeling the same, or someone who has no idea this kind of healing exists. Let's start a conversation. You never know who's waiting for permission to come back to themselves. Thank you for listening, everybody. Te quiero mucho. See you in the next one.